everybody, I'm Lee, and this is Vinny. Today we're going to be continuing our Valley Voices series with you are our coordinator of housing, correct?
Yep.
Megan Hanshaw, who is the personal hero and rock star to case managers throughout Valley Behavioral Health. And I'll get into that in just a moment, but thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I met you when I first started at Valley just about 2 years ago. You were doing the Valley Academy training for case managers. But when I really realized the scope of what you do is the first time I tried to get housing set up for one of my clients. And everybody just said, no, you need to talk to Megan because Megan knows where to go. And you help so many people get housing options. And that's not an easy thing to do, is it?
Not often. That's very kind of you to say, so thank you. I feel like I've had some really great teachers and supports myself, and it really is kind of shocking how challenging it is to get individuals into the right type of housing, let alone housing in general.
So what is it that is holding people back from housing? I mean, when I was a younger person, if I needed an apartment, it wasn't something that took months and months and months to get. And I know we have a housing shortage. Is that the entirety of it, or is there more to it than that?
That's a big piece of it. So there's not a lot of great resources for affordable housing, it seems like, in Salt Lake Valley. And then on top of that, a lot of the clients that we work with have some complex histories or really complex needs related to their management for the mental illness or their medical symptoms or their substance use history or preferences that people just have related to housing. So there's a lot that goes into it for the people that we're working with at Valley.
There are things that can be an even bigger barrier for them too, like if they have an assault charge on their history somewhere, so that's going to be hard for somebody who maybe did everything they're supposed to do. They've gone to jail, they've done their community service, and now that assault charge is making housing tough, right?
Yeah, not just assault, any type of felony. Private landlords can to some extent do what they want or what they need to. So there's
Sure.
So much that goes into it that is specific for each location or each property where they get their funding. There's many, many, many details.
Gotcha. So how long have you been with Valley?
I have worked for Valley for a little over 4 years in a few different capacities, but I love what I do. It's great.
And not a lot of people get to honestly say that. Not a lot of people wake up in the morning and say, you know what, I actually really love what I do. So that's awesome to hear. So when you first came to Valley, were you like, I'm going to do housing, or did you come in to do something else?
No, I was finishing my bachelor's degree in psychology, and I started at Valley Plaza on our swing shift. And the more that I worked with clients and great coworkers and community partners, I kind of felt more drawn to the processes of housing and trying to make it a bit more streamlined, a little bit less complicated, and ultimately more accessible for people who deserve it and need it most.
Now, it's funny. I have a friend who works for one of the housing providers that works with our clients. She's awesome, but she says that it's just one of the hardest things day in and day out is finding some place to go. How do you do it? I placed one client in 9 months in housing.
That is not bad, first of all.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a lot of support, I think, when it comes to the processes part. So right now, I help along with Claudia Alvarado as the other Valley Housing Coordinator. So we're helping individuals move into our Valley Plaza, Safe Haven, and Valley Woods locations. And then especially out of Valley Plaza, once they finish our treatment step program and are ready to move into some level of permanent housing, whether that be in independent living program with Valley, with Section 8, with family, in the community. It's really just kind of getting everyone in one place, figuring out what the needs are, how to overcome barriers, and just making it happen.
How has COVID impacted things? I know that for the last 6 months that I was working as a case manager, it was almost impossible to get anybody from any of the housing agencies even on the phone.
Yeah, COVID has been a huge delay, especially for individuals exiting our programs who are trying to get into community placement. I think now we've got a really good thing going with the Housing Authority and the Road Home that we meet with them once every 2 weeks to kind of just check in, especially focused on high barrier entry tenants. So there's some movement there, but it really just slowed everything down except for Valley Housing. We tried our best to still get people in and have them COVID test beforehand. Our units and the teams at Woods, Plaza, and Safe Haven have done really, really well with helping clients get vaccinated, doing on-site tests. If they can't do on-site tests, getting them to a location where they can get tested to really help make sure that the experience is a safe one for our current residents.
That's one of the things I love about Valley. We didn't stop, we just adapted.
Yep.
That's awesome. Okay, so you had your degree, you just said in criminal psychology?
Just psych.
Just psychology, gotcha. And you came here, you started working on this other stuff. What keeps you going day to day? This is not easy work, and you love it.
I do love it. I think what keeps me here and keeps me motivated, I get the perfect balance for me of direct client care, of great relationships with my coworkers, where I see like the outcomes and us working as a team together still, like I did when I was doing primary case management or team lead stuff. So I get that piece, but then I also get to step a little bit outside of that and work with community partners and try to improve the processes and the communication and advocating for our clients. Like there's quite a few clients who enter our supportive housing programs because they needed more help at the time, but they've really increased their independence and they can be in an apartment in the community now. And it has been an interesting barrier to see those clients try to reintegrate back in the community, which is our mission statement. We want individuals to go back to that lower level of care, and helping them navigate like, oh, this person's ready. They take their meds. They are motivated to stay in housing. They've done really well. And they still run into those like barriers that you'd mentioned earlier to try to help them overcome that. It's like somehow the same thing, but different things every single day. And it keeps me motivated. It keeps me going. I love problem solving. So when I can do that on an individual and like big picture basis, I'm here for it.
That's amazing. So what's next for you? What do you want to do next with this awesome, rewarding career that you've, it looks like, just had built around you? So-
Yeah, so right now I'm getting my master's of social work. So I will be done with that, I think, summer of 2023. And I don't want to stop housing stuff. Like, I think therapy would be a really exciting avenue and something I haven't tried yet, but I really enjoy the bigger processes and kind of figuring out like what's broken and how to improve it so that it's more accessible for people who need it the most. So I don't have like a set idea of what I want to do next. I'm kind of working to learn more about that and what resources are available. But every day I'm like, okay, I could see this being something I do for a long time, is changing the way that we've done things, or that the community, does things to try to make it like a more equitable process for our clients.
What would you say is the biggest barrier for people going into, whether it's Valley Housing or just housing in general? What would you say the biggest barrier is to them, or is it just housing itself is the biggest barrier?
Yeah, to me, it seems twofold in the way that it's housing, like the pure lack of quantity of locations or beds or openings. It seems like there is quite often wait lists, or like we had a client who's on a Section 8 wait list for 8 years, and
Wow.
now it's time and they can move, but that was a hard 8 years for them.
Yeah.
So there's that piece to it. There's a part too where it's like not necessarily affordable for individuals who are on Social Security or Social Security disability. There's a piece too where maybe they need a level of care that doesn't exist, or medical needs, having someone manage their medications. There's just so much complexities to what makes someone successful when they're outside of a hospital, or I guess jail setting is the other kind of controlled environment. So it is strange because it's so broad in the way that, like, yeah, there's no housing and what we have isn't super affordable for the people who need it. And then on top of that, it's like, oh, but also how do they get their meds managed if they need that support, or if they need a physician that they can see? That just doesn't exist in the community, or almost it doesn't exist in a lot of places. So
well, and that can be hard. I worked with a person who really all she needed was housing and help with med management, and that help with med management was nothing more than a phone call saying, hey, remember to take your meds, and they were compliant from that. But it was always just a matter of forgetting and just having that. So that's one level of care. But the biggest thing, and I'm glad you touched on this, was the Social Security piece. You have somebody who's on Social Security disability. What's the benefit we're looking at? $1,200 to $1,600 less?
Yeah, I would say like at least what we see for individuals moving into Valley Housing, minimum $500 all the way up to like $950 is probably average. So impossible to find a place with that budget if it's not subsidized.
Yeah, and subsidization is the only way that that's going to work, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because some of the clients that I worked with, and they were on the maximum disability they could get, and we're looking at just barely over $1,000. And what are we looking at for the median rent for a one-bedroom apartment in Salt Lake City right now?
Oh, gosh. It's a nightmare. It's at least like $800 for studio one bedroom, and that is what everyone wants or needs. So the availability of it is a totally different problem. So.
Yeah, and especially if you're somebody who is struggling with a behavior management issue, maybe they need to have their own space. Maybe a roommate is not something that they can afford to have. That might be something that is not good for them, right? So
Yeah, or alternatively, if they do have a roommate and that person doesn't have mental illness, or if they aren't on the same path as far as like sobriety, if that's something that, a client needs in their housing and they can't find that, like it puts the client then at like an at-risk situation where they're living with someone who they're as a vulnerable adult exposed to some risks. So it may not even be realistic. If it's not even a preference question, it's like, this isn't a way that I can stay safe and stay sober.
Or if it's a domestic violence issue, sometimes that can be a problem too. So it's such a complex issue, and there's no one antecedent to it. There's no one solution to it. I'm amazed that you can keep up with it.
Yeah, I feel like too, like housing sometimes can feel like a lot of losses or a lot of just running into walls. But I think another thing of the piece that keeps me like motivated and keeps me engaged in this work is seeing those clients who have worked really hard on their treatment and have been really accountable for their sobriety, getting into the place of their dreams and
Nice.
being with I think that's actually it. That's the piece where I see them move in and they are maybe struggling or not where they want to be with their life. And then when they move out and they're like, yep, I've done it. I'm ready to go. I know what to do next. That is so, so cool.
Sometimes that win just helps you power through everything else.
Yep.
That's awesome. Is there anything that you think people would find surprising about what you do? Because I mean, that's, as a case manager, it's pretty easy. I help people with med management. I help people get to their appointments. I reminded people that they had to see their therapist. But you help people find housing.
I know myself when I consider like moving to a new location or moving out here to Utah, it's just kind of like, well, do I want to live there? Can I find a place? Can I find a job? Great. I'm ready to go. Simplified, but that's it. Compared to like if someone's entering into our supportive housing programs, there's a pretty comprehensive like screening process, and we work not only with the Valley team client or the client's family support, with their payee, with the property manager of the unit, basically anyone who can support with the client's process to facilitate their move-in. And then the same as they exit the program. So we'll work with the housing authority and their payee and the client and family. So in a way, it's a little bit more, I guess I should say it's like simpler than when I was doing primary case management, because it's the same set of tasks, but it is a heightened need to be so individualized to the client because it's one person's housing needs or it's one person's plan to get out. So you have to know a lot of different resources, and ultimately there's so many processes. Like when I'm helping someone move into an apartment in the community, I have a checklist of, okay, did I talk to all of these people? And there's like 14 people on the list just to make sure that there isn't someone that we're missing, to help the client be set up for success, where they have like all of their treatment transferred to the closest clinic. They know how to get to the clinic. They have a relapse prevention plan. They know how to pay their rent. They know how to talk to their landlord, who maybe doesn't work with our clients very often. There's many things.
Do you ever feel like you'd be a really good detective? Because I think you would be a really good detective.
I think the skills that you learn in this position do set you up for that. I do not know that that is my calling.
No, I mean, who would want that? But still, I'm listening to you talk, and I'm like, you sound like a forensics detective. But that's awesome. Megan, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Yeah, thanks, Lee.